What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Coleman, here with my wonderful co-host, EJ Snyder. And this is our last podcast before the draft. You are hopping on a flight tomorrow to come down to the living room that you see behind you. We're going to be doing the live stream all 3 days of the draft, live and in person. But for now, this is our last real pod before the draft. EJ, how are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm tired, if we're being honest, but I think everybody that does draft work is tired right now, but it's that tired and excited right on the precipice. Christmas is coming. Everybody knows it. The rumor mill has cranked into overdrive this week. I don't know about you. I just put the ear cans on and try not to listen to most of that stuff because it's usually just misdirection. But
yeah, I think Trayvon Walker killed 3 people. I think that's
at least today, and I haven't checked the rosters.
I think Aiden Hutchinson single-handedly crashed the economy.
Yes, he was responsible. I've heard that one, and it's true. No, it's a fantastic time. We're getting ready. Lots of things to tow up. We've got the last of our bootleg position rankings to put out. Those are going to be out before the draft, come hell or high water. And no, it'll be great to be back in the living room where it all started and cover 3 days of the draft plus our little kickoff on Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to it, and we can sleep all we want after the draft.
Before we get into tonight's topic, which is sort of kind of a mock draft, but not really, I do want to take a moment to thank all of the new patrons that have joined over the last few weeks. We have upwards of 70 new folks that have joined the Patreon in the last 2 weeks to support the show. Most of them looking for those position rankings. By the time this is released, we'll have most or all of them out, I would imagine. I think we only have like 4 more position groups or something like that to get to.
Yep.
Edge, DT, interior offensive line, quarterback, and I think DB. Okay, it's like 6 more positions.
Corner, yeah.
Corner. So, we got a few more to release, but we're getting on those in the next 24 to 48 hours and getting those out before the draft. But thank you to everybody who has joined. Remember, if you're already a patron and you're listening to this, you do get access to those position rankings. You also get access to a 20% discount on the merch store, so you can go check that out if you're so inclined to get some merch, support the show. It's pretty good stuff, if I say so myself. I'm wearing this beanie just as I have for every episode. And you got the hoodie on too? Look at us. Look at us being good at branding. So thank you to all you folks that have joined. Now, the topic that we have for you tonight is a little bit different because it's sort of a mock draft, but we are doing a collaborative mock draft for the so-called draft controllers. So, EJ, if you could take a moment to explain who are the teams that we consider to be controlling the draft and why we are specifically mocking for them tonight.
So much of draft coverage gets focused on the top 50 picks, especially the top 100, and we really wanted to look at the teams that have 3 picks within the first 50 overall. With one exception, the Jaguars, they just have the first pick overall, so they have a ton of control, but we're going to let the computer pick for the Jags. We really wanted to focus on those teams that have multiple picks in that first 50, and therefore a ton of draft power, a ton of draft capital, and can really shape the first round with trades up, trades back. So those teams for 2022... and we've ranked them by a number of points. And our good friend Brad Spielberger over at PFF actually created a chart. And we're using Brad's chart that he made with his co-collaborator to give a total number of points to the picks that each team has. And we'll do them in descending order. First one is the New York Jets. They control 4, 10, 35, and 38 overall. That adds up on Brad's scale to 6,485 points. They are the number 1 draft controller, most draft capital in that first 50, most draft capital overall, actually, for the entire draft. New York Giants control 5, 7, and 36, 5382 for points. Houston, 3, 13, and 37, so some high picks in there. 53-13 for overall points. Detroit, number 2 overall, number 32 overall, and then they pick again at 34, and that pick is going to be a kicker. We're going to see that in our mock draft. just over 5,100 points, 5,106 for Detroit. Now, I talked about the Jaguars. We're going to let the Jaguars, they only have the 2 picks, 1 and 33, but they are the first picks in both rounds, which turns out to be both days, right? So the first pick on day 1, and now since the draft's divided into day 2, the first pick on day 2 as well. So a lot of teams will be angling for that one player that slipped, or the quarterback, or whichever player is there, and possibly throwing some trade scenarios at Jacksonville. Always happens. Seattle with 9, 40, and 41. So 41-36 for overall points. And then New Orleans right behind them, 16, 19, and 49. 41-31. So only 5 points difference between New Orleans and Seattle. And then the last draft controller is KC, who are really going to run the end of the first round with picks 29 and 30. And then they have another one back at 50, right at our cutoff limit. Philadelphia's an honorable mention. We always love honorable mentions on this show. They're almost there. They have 15, 18, and 51. So they're just outside our top 50 window, but they come in at 31-63 for overall points because, again, all those picks, well, not all those picks, most of those picks, a little farther down the board, including 51. But we're not gonna pick for KC. So we're gonna pick for the Jets, the Giants, the Texans, the Lions, the Seahawks, the Saints, and the Chiefs. And to do that, we're going to use a site that I've used extensively all draft season called NFL Mock Draft Database, because it'll keep track of who's chosen and who hasn't. And that's the system we're going to use, and it'll show everybody all the picks that we're going to make.
And most importantly, you're going to set it to aggressive. So the computer running the draft for all the other teams, it will make some wild picks, which ironically makes it more realistic, because the less chalk you go, I found it to be a more realistic representation of what happens in the actual draft, where all these different teams have different valuations and they start making wild ass picks, pretty much all over the first round. So we set it to aggressive to kind of simulate how wild the first round can be. So we're gonna reset real quick here. Our wonderful editor Jay is going to do a quick little transition, and that'll get us right into the mock draft.
All right. So here we are on the NFL Mock Draft Database, and as you can see, we've selected the Texans, the Giants, the Seahawks, the Lions, the Saints, the Chiefs, and the Jets. As we mentioned before, we'll be drafting for this year. We're only going to draft through 2 rounds. We're really just going to go through 50 picks, and then we'll use it at normal speed so we can see some of those other wild picks that are going to make fan bases fly into a fury and possibly break their televisions. We did set it to aggressive because chaotic is just plain old off the rocker. Realistic is largely choosing by the numbers, so you can almost tell who's going to get picked next. Aggressive sets it in that more realistic mode where you get some interesting picks, and you always get those in the draft. We're not doing trades, but it's set to strict, and with that, we are going to start our draft controllers mock draft.
Okay, Aiden Hutchinson, first overall to the Jaguars. Very predictable. We are now on the clock for the Lions. Now, maybe it's just me. I'm very tempted to go Malik Willis here. Where do you stand on that?
I believe if they want Malik Willis, this is the pick they're going to have to use to do it. I don't know how sold they are on Willis. If I was drafting for the future and I needed a quarterback, Willis would be that guy. He is on the top of my potential for quarterback list. But at number 2, with Dan Campbell running the show, I'm not sure that they're sold, but you can never tell with teams and quarterbacks. They get so much more information than we do. We see the tape, some interviews with the player, but they have so much more information in terms of meetings, being able to put them on the board, talk to coaches, talk to high school coaches, talk to trainers. We don't get to do all of that. So I am tempted to throw the curveball and make some people in Detroit smash their TVs, maybe preemptively, because it's not that we don't like Malik Willis. It's that I believe if that happens, there will be some raging going on in the Motor City. But typically their needs, so far as we have them, are laid out at edge, quarterback and wide receiver. And obviously, everybody but Aiden Hutchinson is still on the board, so they have their choice. A lot of people are not sure that they're sold on Kayvon Thibodeaux either as an edge. So could they throw a curveball and go for Trayvon Walker?
So
I don't know.
Here's the thing. I like Kayvon Thibodeaux. I love Kayvon Thibodeaux even.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think he's one of the 3 best edge rushers in this class. And I say that as somebody who loves Kayvon Thibodeaux. I was kind of adding up all my grades, production grades, tape grades, measurables.
Yeah.
I ended up with a higher grade on Arnold Ebiketie than I did on Thibodeaux, which sounds like a hot take, and it probably is, but
Yeah, it's funny because my top tier is Hutchinson. Well, not in any particular order. That order gets released in a couple of days, but it's Hutchinson, Thibodeaux, and Ebiketie. And I felt the same way. I was like, well, it probably takes some heat for putting Ebiketie in the top tier, but I don't think so. I think like you do that he is one of the premier talents at edge. Would they take him at 2? I doubt it.
no, they probably wouldn't. But they might take
No.
They might take Walker.
Walker is
I could see Walker.
I think Thibodeaux or Walker. So what are we going to do? Are we going to throw the big curveball for Willis, or are we going to throw the small curveball for Walker?
I would personally vote Walker.
All right. So we're going to say the Detroit Lions pick Trayvon Walker from Georgia. We're going to go ahead and draft him. And then we're on the clock again because we're in the thick of draft controllers here for the next 4 picks, or next, 4 picks overall, next 3 picks in a row. Texans, you being the Texans fan, I'm going to lean on you for needs. We've got them listed as edge, wide receiver, and defensive back, generally, not corner or safety. You've got your pick of the litter.
Man. See, it's tough because like in my own mock draft for the Film Room channel, I was like, oh, well, they're going to get one of the top 2 edges of Walker or Hutchinson, and they're both off the board in this scenario. So it's really tough for me. But that being said, I do think there's some other really, really, really top shelf talents that are available. And I'm kind of going like half predictive, half what I would do here in terms of mentality. I know they've been doing a lot of work on Derek Stingley. And I think when you look at the talent of Derek Stingley and the personality of Derek Stingley, I think he fits out of the available players that are here, because I would have gone Hutchinson or Walker. Out of the players that are left, I think Stingley is the guy that is left on the board that best matches what Houston is looking for in terms of having a shutdown corner who, from what was described to me from my LSU friends that were in the building with him, quote, a quiet killer, in that he shows up, does his job every single day, says 5 words, but he plays like a Pro Bowl corner. You're never going to have any issues with him ever. He's a pro's pro. Grandfather actually played in the league and was, I think his grandfather was like paralyzed by Jack Tatum on the field, believe it or not.
Huh.
I know, yeah, wild story. But so he's got football bloodlines and all that kind of stuff. But he's wildly talented corner, great kid, never gonna have any issues, which just screams Texans. Like they love the quiet, good dudes that are talented if they can get them.
All right, I'm sold. You sold me. We'll use the pick on Derek Stingley Jr., the corner from LSU.
This is probably the only mock you're ever gonna see Derek Stingley go top 3, but.
I think we get to do what we want. We get
Yeah.
to share. We have co-GM power here.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the first pick of the Jets. Now, this is one we talked about pre-show. Needs are corner, edge, and wide receiver. Not necessarily in that order, but they do want to come out of these top 4 picks that they have with a player in each of those areas. I have to imagine that's true. So if that's the case, if we're looking at who's left at edge, Kayvon Thibodeaux's sitting there, and I have trouble believing that Robert Saleh wouldn't pick him as a talent. Their defensive line is loaded, but he's sitting there, and they probably didn't think he would be. But again, that's the way the draft happens. If we're looking at wide receiver, there's Garrett Wilson, who's been mocked to them a lot, Drake London, who gives them a very different dimension than the receivers they currently have in the building. And then at corner, there's Sauce Gardner sitting there, who, if you're talking about a plug-and-play corner, when we were talking about our player rankings, I said that Sauce's ceiling in our all ceiling team was Darrelle Revis, like prime Darrelle Revis, where you basically give him half the field and say, we're not worried about it. So given that they've got all those options, which way do you lean with the first pick? Because they've got another one coming up here pretty quickly, but with 4, who do you think's not going to be there at their second pick? Because that's really what it comes down to.
Oh man, I don't think Jameson Williams is going to be there because you look
10?
at 10 because Atlanta could take him, the Giants absolutely could take him. If the Panthers aren't satisfied with the remaining offensive line options, let's say they're really dialed in on a certain tackle and the Giants take them, like. Would it shock me if they take Jameson Williams? No. Like, I think legitimately the Falcons and the Giants are the biggest threats, but either way, like even Seattle could, we're talking about the real draft here, even Seattle could take that 9th pick, trade down with somebody who's trying to jump the Jets for Jameson Williams. I don't believe he's going to be there at 10. I really don't.
So you're leaning Jameson Williams at 4 over Thibodeaux, over Sauce Gardner. That's my only problem with that in terms of if I'm the GM, I know that wide receiver has one of the lowest hit rates in the first round. I love Jameson Williams. He's my wide receiver 1. We should get that out of the way first. That ranking's already been released. That's out in the wind. Everybody knows that. I love Jameson Williams. I think he would be a really good fit with Zach at quarterback. I think Zach could get him the ball on those deep shots, whether it's from the pocket or rolling out. So I like the fit, but what I'm looking at is, man, how am I going to feel if Jameson Williams turns out to be one of those guys that's a guy and Sauce Gardner goes on to be Sauce Gardner? Because
Sauce is probably one of the safer picks in the draft. So you could very easily sell me on Sauce because at minimum there's going to still be a receiver there at 10.
That's what I'm thinking is if you pick Sauce at 4 with literally no receivers off the board, I don't think all 3 of those top guys, or quite frankly, with as much as I love Chris Olave, 4 of those guys are certainly not going to be off the board in the next 6 picks. So you pick Sauce and you get a very nice consolation prize of a receiver that helps your room really no matter what, because I think any of those 4 do.
You could sell me on that for sure.
Okay. Sold to the man in the bootleg hat. All right, 1 Sauce Gardner coming up at 4.
2 corners in the top 4 is not what I expected, but here we are.
Well, welcome to the draft, and especially this draft, because there are very few locks, right?
Yeah.
There are very few chalk picks. There are very few agreements on even who is the top player at each position group, and that is rare.
Yeah. Well, we got every tackle available for the Giants at 5. I personally lean Evan Neal because he already has experience at right tackle. You don't have to teach him anything. People are all over the place in terms of which tackles they prefer between Evan Neal, Ike Mekwonu, Charles Cross. I don't necessarily think there's a wrong answer. For me personally, I would go Evan Neal, though, just because you don't have to train him to do anything. He's already done right tackle before.
Yeah, my grades on Ickey and Evan Neal are very close, although they have different strengths. Their overall grades are very close. Ickey was my top tackle, Evan Neal was my number 2, and Charles Cross was my number 3. But if you've got the choice of the top 2, why bother with 3? I'm fine with going Evan Neal and giving him to Dable and the rest of the Giants staff and letting him protect Daniel Jones from all those fumble-causing hits.
All right, so this is the first computer pick was Kayvon Thibodeaux at number 6 for Carolina. So you're taking Brian Burns and putting Kirkland Brand Brian Burns across from him. I mean, I don't hate it.
We're not gonna one, critique computer picks, and 2, the Panthers, because the Panthers they're one of the weirdest teams this year in terms of what they're gonna do with their picks. Because the other thing about doing that is now they basically have to sign Baker. Right, because they don't have another pick for a long time.
I mean, unless they just want to be bad and get Bryce Young or Will Levis or whoever.
Yeah,
they could just be bad. Like, I don't think there's any shame in that.
Yeah, if they don't trade down, the Panthers are one of those fascinating teams. And again, not one of our draft controllers because literally they have one pick in the top 10. They don't have another pick and well into the hundreds. So there's going to be a long gap for Panthers fans if they don't trade down and pick up some picks. They traded down a lot last year, but they did not trade down with their top pick. So it'll be really interesting to see what Carolina does, even though they're not really swinging the draft. And we're right back to the Giants. It feels like they just picked. They did. We already chalked off their OT need. Now they've got edge and interior offensive line listed as their other needs. If we're talking about edge, Jermaine Johnson's not bad.
Can I throw something out?
Of course.
Given this scenario, which I kind of didn't really expect this to be an option. So there hasn't been, I don't believe there's been any receivers off the board yet, right? This is kind of coming up as a scenario where I think there might be some receivers there in the front end of round 2 for them, just because we're not already 3 deep.
Sure.
What would you feel about going to Kwanu and putting him at guard and making sure that nobody ever touches Daniel Jones again?
Yeah, I know that you want to do that. I mean, come on, if you come out with Neal and Ekwonu, I think Ekwonu would be the guard of those two in that scenario, but it also gives you, in my mind, some insurance if one of your tackles goes down that now you're starting Icky at left and Neal at right, and I don't think anybody would be really upset with that. My only piece is Brian Daboll knows what an alpha wide receiver gives an offense, and they're already kind of making motions about moving on from Kadarius Toney, who wasn't an alpha, but they're already sort of cleaning out their wide receiver core. And he was there when they traded for Stephon Diggs, and so was Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen was there too, so they know, and they did that on purpose. And I think it would be very tempting if they think one of these top 3 or 4 guys is that guy, right? If they believe that Jameson Williams is, or they believe that Drake London is, those would kind of be the top guys for me at that sort of outside Alpha X spot. And they go, this is going to be the straw that stirs our drink on offense. They didn't think they were going to get their shot at all of them. They probably thought that 1, maybe 2 of them would be off the board by now. I think you can get a guard later on that really helps you. I'm not so sure. Well, I guarantee you're not finding another Drake London or a Jameson Williams farther on down. So,
well, we did say earlier that Jameson, we said earlier Jameson Williams is like not somebody you're going to get twice. It's
nope.
When you have your shot.
All right, I say they take the shot with Jameson Williams. Could be London, could be Williams. I don't really care which. I know people have their preferences. Which one do you prefer?
I would go Jameson Williams.
All right. Jameson Williams it is.
He's the least replicable skill set of the day 2 receivers.
Oh, the Falcons go Kyle Hamilton at 8.
Oh, God.
There will be unrest in Atlanta. And now we get down to the first of the Seahawks picks at 9.
Is Charles Cross there?
He is, and I think Icky's still there. Did he go? No, Icky's still there. I know that they've been linked to Cross, but it's, I think, typically because they thought Neal and Icky would be gone. If it was me and I was presented, I like both of these players a lot, but if you give me a choice between Icky or Cross, I'm going to go with Icky, especially with Pete Carroll's proclivity to run the ball and Icky's run blocking. And
in a vacuum, for pure pass protection, I go Cross. But considering the team this is and what they like to do, which is run the ball, how can you not go Ekwonu?
Yeah, it's Icky. So Icky comes to the Northwest. That'd be fun. All right, and we're right back to the Jets again. This is the New York draft through and through. And when you add in Philadelphia, who just missed being 3 in the top 50, you're really looking at the sort of turnpike draft here. So the Jets, the first time around, went with Gardner. Now we look at the wide receiver core, and they've still got their choice between Wilson, London, Olave. Really, I think those are probably the choices. And given the skill sets on the Jets, they've got Corey Davis. They do not seem at all sold on Mims. They've got our favorite Old Miss killer in the slot, most likely. So, who would you take between Wilson and probably London?
I would lean London just because Zach Wilson is so good at throwing, those lobs up outside the numbers deep down the field, which is what Drake London excels at. I think that it's like putting Shaq with Kobe. Like Kobe throws it up, Shaq slams it down. Like that's that duo to me. So with Jameson Williams being off the board, I think it's a no-brainer. Like you take Drake London at 10 and laugh your way to the bank.
Done. All right, so McDuffie goes to the Commanders. Malik Willis to the Vikings.
The computer, I actually agree with that one.
Planning for post-Kirk Cousins life in Minnesota. They've got Cousins for this year. We've talked about Malik Willis really needing a year and not having to start right away. That's the best thing for his development because, again, tremendous physical skills, great mental acumen as well. But a big jump coming from Liberty's offense. I wrote up in my little blurb about Willis that unlearning all the bad things that he's figured out behind Liberty's offensive line running for his life is going to be a lot of his development. Just like, no, trust your blockers. It's different. These guys are going to hold up. So yeah. I don't hate it.
They can't get rid of Kirk until 2024 because his dead money cap hit in 2023 because of the void years is $48.8 million. But giving Malik Willis 2 years on the bench is not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not. There would again be unrest in Minnesota, but that's why we like aggressive. All right, Texans second pick. So we got to get somebody to pair with Stingley Jr. Their needs as well as anybody.
Man, it's tough for me to not go Garrett Wilson here and just kind of make Davis Mills' life a little bit easier. Because I thought Davis Mills played pretty well for a rookie. Like
I thought he played extremely well for
vastly
a rookie.
Exceeded expectations. And I think I kind of want to see what he's got. So giving him more weapons and, add some interior pass protection on day 2, which is where there's a million dudes that can do that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of down for that. Give me Garrett Wilson.
All right, Garrett Wilson it is. And the Houston Texans find themselves in a very interesting position of we drafted a guy that was kind of a guy, and it turns out he could be our young quarterback, at least for now going forward, at an extremely cheap rate. Let's run with that. And so it allows them the flexibility to not have to be like, well, Malik Willis is off the board and man, we need a quarterback or we're not going anywhere. They're like, we've got Mills. We can take, ostensibly on the top of even this list, but a lot of lists, the top receiver on the board. So Jordan Davis to the Ravens.
Oh man, that's so Ravens. That is so Ravens. It's so Ravens.
And then Karlaftis to Philadelphia, keeping that strong D-line tradition going there. And the first pick for the Saints, which is going to be a little bit different because while the GM is the same, the coaching staff is different. We are definitely in the post-Drew Brees era now. Year 2 of that. Saints have a lot of choices here. They could go wide receiver. They could go quarterback. They really need offensive line. They got rid of their stalwart offensive left tackle. So let's take a look at the tackle market. And Charles Cross is sitting there. Not a long flight from Mississippi State to New Orleans.
How could you not? I mean, I expect them to trade up for Cross to begin with. Like I think that's why they were getting those picks. Because they're trying to load up assets to go get Cross anyway. So if he's already there at 16, you might as well.
Yeah, it fits their mold, their development mold to a T too. You like grab a super athletic guy who needs a little bit of development, less than the last one, quite frankly. And they do a great job developing offensive linemen in New Orleans. So great landing spot for Cross and a natural fit. I'm with you. So Charles Cross becomes a Saint. Ooh. Nakobe Dean
to the Chargers.
Okay. And then Devin Lloyd to the Eagles. So Dean goes before Lloyd. That to me that's the aggressive kicking in there. I think Eagles fans would be super pleased. I've seen Devin Lloyd mock to the Eagles, more than probably any other team. and you pair him with Karlaftis, that defense gets some teeth. I know people are clamoring for more weapons for Hurts, but there's more weapons in this draft. We're just talking about the top 50 picks. So premium picks on defense for the Eagles. Nakobe Dean ends up heading out to LA in your neck of the woods. That would be super fun, quite frankly, to have him playing in front of Derwin.
Oh man.
Good times.
Man, ooh, actually, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're like, I like that pick. He would be great to watch. That would be worth the ticket to get into SoFi for. And the Saints, very quickly again, having traded up to get these double up picks, they didn't end up having to bundle them to move up to get their tackle. They stay put in this particular scenario, and their tackle falls to them. So you've got wide receiver or quarterback now. If we're wide receiver, oh boy.
I mean, Olave is tempting here.
I would be hard-pressed not to go Olave, but looking at quarterback, I don't think they covet Pickett because of potential lack of upside. Pickett spent a very long time in college. He's one of the most polished signal callers coming out, but he's probably just about everything he's going to be as well. And if they're not completely sold on that in terms of the West Coast model and lots of crossing routes, mesh, I don't think Pickett's on their radar, and the rest of the quarterbacks not as highly ranked as a player like Olave, who I think is one of the best wide receivers in this draft. It would be, to come out of the first round with Charles Cross, Chris Olave,
it's hard to do better than that.
I think that's a double win for New Orleans.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go Chris Olave. As much as I want to sort of stuff him in my back pocket and reunite him with Justin Fields later on, Chris Olave becomes a Saint. Oh, Pickett stays in town and goes to the Steelers. We'll scroll back through these picks real quick, give everybody a look at what the computer thought was worthwhile. So Pickett stays in Pittsburgh. Treylon Burks to New England. I've seen this fit matched before. He'd be really interesting as a very serious yak threat mixed with Mack, who is accurate and on time on the short and underneath throws. Burks's strength, well, he has two in my mind. One is ridiculous yak from small throws underneath, and that can be screens, tunnel screens, quick slants, unders, all that stuff. And the other one is just beating guys up down the field and out muscling them to win at the catch point. He just overwhelms them physically. And Matt can take advantage of that. He's not a bad deep ball thrower, but boy, all those short, right on time, super crisp throws from him, Treylon Burks turning those into much longer gains, I think would be very attractive to the the New England coaching staff. Daxton Hill becomes a Packer.
With all these receivers on the board, if they take a safety,
oh yes,
Packer Nation's gonna be livid. And I love Daxton Hill, but come on.
It continues the tradition of one of the safeties I like the most in the draft becoming a Packer, because I was a huge Darnell Savage fan and they took him too. So Daxton Hill, very versatile player, would give him a lot of options on defense, but yes, there would be some cries for offense. Zion Johnson of the Cardinals, I don't hate that at all. I think that is a really solid pick. Linderbaum to the Cowboys. A lot of people have said that Linderbaum reminds them of Travis Frederick in play style, ends up in a similar destination. Devontae Wyatt to the Bills. Not a fit I've seen, but I like it.
I think he fits their profile in terms of they like to bring defensive linemen in waves. They want them to be fresh always. If they give them 30 snaps a game, but it's 30 snaps of fire and brimstone, I think a third down package with Wyatt and
thinned out Epinesa on the corner.
Thinned out Epinesa. Who's the Rousseau, who had a pretty good rookie year.
Really good rookie year. Much better than I thought he might.
That could be fun. I like that.
It's a lot of talent. So they're going to bring. They don't have too many needs. And again, at 25, you're looking at Devontae Wyatt, and you go, well, hard to do better than this.
Why not?
We'll make it work. Roger McCreary to the Titans. Interesting. Would play inside for them, but I think his demeanor would be Mike Vrabel through and through. He is a tough guy, loves to play physically and in people's faces. Some people worry about the arm length, but he's one of those guys. I said that he was my guy in this draft for shouldn't possibly work at his position, but absolutely does.
He's just uniquely sticky. Like it's weird. Like he reminds me of who's the guy?
I cannot wait for the comments.
You ever watch The Replacements where they got like the elephant sweat on the hands and the ball just sticks? Like Roger McCreary just like before every single game he coats himself in elephant sweat and just sticks himself to the receiver because like he is in the hip pocket every single play. He is pesky. Did you watch him against Jahan Dotson? Yeah, like Jahan couldn't shake him.
No, he hassled him hard all game. Like there were very few options for Dotson to make uncontested plays, which is where some of the worry about Dotson comes from. But Kaiir Elam ends up as a buck. Don't dislike it. That's an aggressive secondary, and he would be a replenishment piece for them. And then Kenyon Green, man, that's tough. Daxton Hill and Kenyon Green, two players I really like becoming Packers. Seems a bit high for Packers to invest on the interior offensive line. They tend to do that lower, and those guys end up as killers anyways. But Kenyon Green is wildly talented.
And yet, who's going to catch the ball?
Yes. As all Packers fans would be asking, because honestly, we've stayed on wide receiver there on our availables, and they've got the choice of Pickens or Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, all of which, Aaron could make use of very well because he makes, chicken salad out of chicken feathers all the time with their receiving core. But those guys are not chicken feathers. Those guys are talented wide receivers. So we get down to the Kansas City portion of the draft, which is 29 and 30 back to back. They get their choice here. Their needs, wide receiver, certainly with Tyreek Hill moving on. Edge, gotta replenish that. And then corner is a lower key need. But again, if the opportunity presents itself to get a top quality corner, we've got Booth. Kyler Gordon, I think, would fit pretty well for them. Woolen definitely would, but he's farther down the board. I would consider Booth or Gordon here. In terms of wide receiver, Pickens seems like a fit to me. And in terms of edge, boy, Jermaine,
all of them.
But like Ojabo, you're not going to get anything out of for most of the year, if at all. But Jermaine Johnson and Boye Mafe,
out of those options, I still would lean Ebiketie, though.
Yeah, Ebiketie would be my fire in a bottle for sure because he would bring them, again, we talk about elements they don't have. What's in their room and how do you want to supplement that? Right now, Kansas City does not have an Ebiketie. Right.
No, and what's funny because my comp for him is one of the best Chiefs of the last 20 years, Justin Houston. I think it's almost the exact same profile. A little bit shorter, still has length, extremely explosive, corners really well, a lot of power. Like it's Justin Houston.
All right, so we get to do the double here. Ebiketie can be one of our picks. Probably should be the second one. Doesn't really matter. It's a little bit of salary, but who are we going to sandwich Ebiketie with in terms of either wide receiver or corner?
I kind of feel receiver here just because I want the fifth-year option.
Yep.
Because I think, receiver is insanely expensive, and just having one extra year before the cap hit explodes would be nice.
They're in a rough spot because all three of the positions they need are premium positions. Wide receiver, corner, and edge, like the top contract for all those positions is hefty.
Out of these receivers, who would you want?
I'd be hard-pressed not to go with Pickens. Okay. If I want outside, and they played Hill more outside than everybody's, he's a slot guy, he's fast. Hill had a lot of reps outside because, again, Kansas City has a ton of motion. So he might have started the slot and, whoever's outside motions in, and now he's basically playing outside. I just think Pickens' ability to track the ball deep works very well with Mahomes' strength. He has some of the best hands in this draft, and he also is one of the most ferocious blockers in this draft. And with all the creative runs that Kansas City likes to try, they don't all work. But, when they do, if you get a ferocious edge block, it can turn a 10-yard run into a 35-yard run. And Pickens will do that regularly because he will get in people's face. And they're not whispers. Like, he actually got kicked out of a game for throwing a corner into a wall. And Kansas City famously has a pretty relaxed tolerance with player character issues. So I think Pickens is a fit. Yeah.
Relaxed tolerance. Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah, I think we're in agreement here. George Pickens and Arnold Ebiketie back-to-back, yeah?
Yeah, seems reasonable to me. That's a hell of a haul. I love both of those players. Yeah, I think Chiefs fans would not riot.
Ooh, Bengals take Lewis Cine at 31 to pair with Jesse there. That's mean. I like that.
Yeah, that is a adding to a strength, right? We both love Jesse Bates as an all-everything safety, especially good in the deep third by himself. Lewis Cine really good at running the alley from too high and hammering run fits. Can play deep. You play deep mostly, actually, if you look at the safety usage for all the top safeties in this draft. If you look at how many times they were deployed deep in the box or in the slot, Cine was predominantly a deep safety.
Still making tackles at the line of scrimmage because he's a human missile.
Yeah, he has a massive amount of range. And now we get to the portion that is going to be really interesting. The last pick of the first round, which is always hot real estate for anybody that wants that fifth year of control and people, moving up. We're not doing any trades in this particular draft, but expect Detroit to get some action on that pick. And even if they don't, it is over day 1 to day 2, but within 3 picks in the draft, they have 2 of them. This is going to fill the coffers in Detroit. So if you are looking at this final slot in the first round with the optional fifth year of control, which is part of the CBA, who do you go for with the Lions? Now, way up at the top,
we took Walker, right?
We took Trayvon Walker from Georgia. So we've got our edge. They need QB. They need wide receiver. They've got some good options at wide receiver, but again, there's, I think, 4 good options at wide receiver there, and they've got a pick coming up 2 picks from now. It is on the next day, but it's literally 2 picks from now. Maybe wide receiver isn't the thing. If you're going to go quarterback, do you, for the fifth-year option, snag Corral or Ritter? I would think Ritter would be their choice, schematically, to give themselves as many options as possible. Again, doesn't have to play right away. They're expecting to play Goff this year, and Ritter could be brought along and work on some of those holes in his game and still have 4 years worth of contract left after next season. So
kind of playing this out of my head, because everybody just assumes, with the quarterback class being stronger next year, Detroit's going to be in position to get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whoever your QB1 is next year.
Yep.
They're going to be like, they're going to be in prime position to get them. I'm not so sure about that because Detroit was in a lot of games last season, and they lost some games from some weird, freaky bullshit that I can't promise is going to happen 2 years in a row. Like, they might end up with like the 8th or the 9th pick because their roster does have some strengths. I think they have a talented young offensive line. I think we're adding to weapons in this draft. Like Jared Goff, say what you want about him. I think you can win games with Jared Goff.
Sure.
Like they have some defensive pieces. They still got to restock the cupboard, but it's not like they're completely bereft of talent. I just think this was a team that played really hard, had some bad luck, lost more games than they probably should have. They're still not a good team yet. But I don't necessarily think they're going to be bad enough to get first overall. So I kind of look at the quarterback situation right now in terms of developing a guy because you can get out of Jared Goff's contract really easily next year. Where do you put Desmond Ridder versus Will Levis or Jerkovich or, any of those quarterbacks? If you think you're going to get the 4th quarterback next year, it's like, do you think Desmond Ridder is as good as those guys? in which case you might as well take him now and let him sit and learn so he's ready to go next year. And then you don't have to worry about the quarterback class next year. And you can use that quarterback class next year to trade for a bunch more picks to surround Ridder with even more talent. So it's an interesting dilemma here.
Yep, I'm gonna bring up something else, and this is a classic study in what happens in the draft, and you can't guarantee it by any stretch, but it happened in this draft, so we're gonna talk about it. They took Trayvon Walker at 2.
Mm-hmm.
Solid pick. They're sitting here at 32, and they have their choice of Jermaine Johnson or Boye Mafe if they want help this year. Like, David Ojabo is, I think, a clearly better edge rusher when healthy than both of those guys.
I would agree, yeah.
But Jermaine Johnson is a very solid football player right now, and I think he has more potential than he got to show at Florida State, which is kind of scary because when he flashed at Florida State, it was unbelievable, and he's a great run defender right now. He is one of, if not the best edge setter as an edge in this class against the run. And then Boye Mafe is just everything. He's productive. He's wildly athletic. He's one of the better dropping edges in this draft, so he gives you some defensive flexibility there. So what could you have done at 2? Again, if you knew and you don't know that Johnson, Mafe, and quite frankly Cameron Thomas, but that's a little bit farther down, are going to be there, like the opportunity cost of taking Trayvon Walker at 2 and having those guys on the board staring in the face, which are arguably, I mean, Jermaine Johnson, if we go to all, is the best player remaining on the board. And he's still there. And could have got him at 32. So it's just one of those things that happens. You can't be sure of it. But the opportunity cost for going away from positions, as opposed to, if we think Detroit needs a wide receiver, we're down to wide receiver like 4 or 5.
More than that, even.
Yeah.
Because I got Jahan Dotson as wide receiver 8.
Yeah.
So around there.
Depends on them. So
yeah.
Do we go with Ridder? And again, we've got to pick 2 picks from now so we can get whoever else. But really for that 5th year of control, do we go for the quarterback? Do we swing big there? Do we think we want a receiver under that 5th year of control, again, for the cost? Or do we want to say, like, hey, we're not sure that Jeff Okudah's the deal, and we're going to go grab Andrew Booth or Kyler Gordon?
I think... Oh, God damn, this is tough.
Yeah, it's not easy. This is where everybody's like, I want to be the GM. And then this happens, and they're like, I don't want to be the GM.
I think I would swing for the fences with Christian Watson. So we're getting the 5th year option because Jacksonville's not taking a quarterback at 33 anyway.
Yep.
And if we want to, we can take Ridder at 34. And if he works out to the point where, we end up having to pay Desmond Ridder $45 million a year in 3 years or $50 million, whatever the going rate is, fine. Oh, no, we took a good quarterback.
Yeah, nobody cares at that point. If it works out, nobody cares. And, notably, some very good quarterbacks have come out of the top of the 2nd round. Drew Brees.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Carr, too, actually.
Yep. There's a lot of decent, very top of the 2nd round quarterbacks because it's this situation, right? They just didn't go as the last pick, and then day 2, everybody goes, oh my God, the quarterback's still on the board. Go get him. So we're going to swing for the fences with Watson and pick up Ridder on the return, sounds like.
Hopefully, unless Jacksonville, through the computer, does some really
it is aggressive.
It is aggressive.
All right. So Watson headed to Detroit.
They took
Penning.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Beefing up that offensive line.
Bring me Desmond Ridder.
Bring me Desmond Ridder.
This is a pretty good draft for Detroit so far, not going to lie.
Detroit, I mean, they had a great draft last year as well, so I would not be surprised by that part of it. And then the Jets hit the sort of back half of this turnaround, right? They've got all those picks. They got the picks up high, and now we've got 35 and 38. 2 picks within the next 4 belong to the Jets. And funny enough, the 2 sandwich picks in the middle are also held by draft controllers, the Giants and the Texans. So, we're not, just because we're out of the 1st round doesn't mean the influence of the draft controllers is over. They're going to run the top of the 2nd round too. When we say they hold all the cards, I can't remember a draft. I was thinking about this the other day. I can't remember a draft where this many teams had concentrations of picks. Usually it feels like there's about half this many teams that have 3 picks in the top 50. Maybe one has 4. But like there's 3 or 4 like, oh, if you're going to trade, you go trade with those guys. Or if anybody's going to trade up, it's going to be these 3 teams. There's 7 or 8 teams on our list here, and they are absolutely going to run the top 50 picks of this draft.
And as long as you don't need a quarterback, this is actually a pretty good draft to have a lot of picks. There's a lot of
fully
depth
agree.
here.
Which, as a Chicago fan, is a thing,
Yeah.
right? Is like, hey, it's have your quarterback of the future. You don't need to go digging for one because it is a tough year to go digging for a quarterback. Doesn't matter through trade, through free agency, through the draft. So, little recap of what the Jets already have on board. They ended up with Sauce Gardner and Drake London, not a bad haul at the top of the first round. That takes wide receiver, ostensibly takes wide receiver and corner off their list. And again, they have 2 of the next 4. Their unmet needs really goes back to edge, and they have a lot of choices at edge.
If you can start with just looking at how their defense is structured, the only piece they could still use is that lighter, fast, weak side edge that you're putting at a 9 technique and saying go hunt. You do have Carl Lawson coming off the Achilles. They got Jacob Martin, who I think is a good player as well. Mm-hmm. But if you can get another one with Boye Mafe at 35, and you start your draft with Sauce Gardner, Drake London, and Boye Mafe.
Yeah, and you put Boye Mafe with Robert Saleh, who's very used to developing hyper-athletic edge, Sam, interior linebacker prospects, like all that. It's a good spot. So I'm fine with Mafe as the first one, and we'll deal with the second one as we get to it. From an opportunity cost, if you weren't going to go edge, where would you go? Because there's a boatload. There's really what I would consider, 3 edges that are going to play this year, 4 edges overall, and there's only 4 more picks until you pick again. If you weren't going to pick edge here, what would you pick? And I'll go to all so you can just see what's floating out there.
Now is about when you start to look at Breece Hall. It's when you start to look at Kenneth Walker. Those are the 2 guys that most people have as either RB1 or RB2. Personally, I would lean Walker, but I completely understand why people like Breece Hall. It doesn't really matter to me. You're going to get a good running back. I think Petrie would be interesting.
I just saw Petrie and thought, oh, man, what would Saleh do with Petrie? He hasn't had that role typically. If we think about the safeties in San Francisco when he was there, they didn't really have that sort of honey badger star
Hold up.
role.
Go down.
Yeah.
You seeing what I'm seeing?
That Ryman's still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's our 4th tackle. So
Ryman is your swing? Because, again, I do not know how much fire is behind all this Mekhi Becton smoke. I don't know what's going on there. I have no idea.
Neither do I. If it's true, and we both love Mekhi Becton as a prospect, they seem set with right tackle with Fant. But if they aren't settled on Mekhi Becton, or they're willing to move him, which we haven't heard that yet. Again, we don't know anything about Becton. We believe that he's the future there at left tackle. If they're not sold on that and Ryman's sitting there, that would be where I would go if I didn't take edge. But I'm leaning towards Mafe and see where the chips fall.
I would agree, but man, if Ryman's there at 38, 3 picks from now.
And you don't like Becton, I'm with you. You take the swing. So, all right, Boye Mafe heads to the Big Apple, hanging out with Robert Saleh. That puts us, same city, different team, back to the Giants for 36 overall. And we've got, at the top, to recap, they took Evan Neal and Jameson Williams, so they got their tackle. They got their wide receiver. Really now we're talking about edge for them, and again, a really good spot to be in, or interior offensive line.
I lean with edge here with Jermaine Johnson. I don't know about you.
Jermaine Johnson is very hard to ignore because I don't think the rating they have here of 11 is an overrank. I mean, I would imagine he's in that range. He's a little bit lower for me, but he is solidly a middle of the first round player, and we are starting to, get out of the top of the third part.
There's been buzz that the Jets are looking at him at 4.
I understand, and there are people that have him ranked as their top edge. Doug Farrar for USA Today has Jermaine Johnson as his top edge. So if he's sitting there and you're at 36, you consider yourself lucky and take him, as long as there's not some crazy video that's been released to tank his
Laramie
draft
Tunsil
stock.
style.
Yeah. So, all right, Jermaine Johnson, pretty easy sell for Giants fans there. And now we're back to the Texans at 37.
Who do we take for them already again?
Yeah, just to recap,
Stingley
for the Texans, we got Stingley and Garrett Wilson.
It's a great start.
Yep.
Man, I'm still kind of
also
thinking
edge or more weapons, or maybe the running backs. I don't know.
I would probably, because the edge rotation right now, because they lost Jacob Martin, who I happen to really like as a player, is kind of like a fire breather off the edge. So right now their edge rotation is Jonathan Grenard, who's vastly exceeded my expectations. Mm-hmm. You got Ogbonia Okoronkwo. God damn it, I always mess up this name. Okoronkwo.
There you go.
Jordan Jenkins, Derek Rivers. Like, they need an edge. I'd probably go Cameron Thomas.
Well, that's one thing.
Oh, Petrie.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah. Give me Jalen Petrie. He's
Petrie or Brisker, right? Because Petrie to me, I don't know. Yes, he's listed as a safety. I really think he's a nickel. And if you look at his usage, he spent the vast majority of his time. We talked about Lewis Seen spending the vast majority of his time deep in the box or slot. Petrie spent like the wild majority of the time in the slot.
Yeah, no, he was that star position in the 4-2-5.
Yeah, he's that star up close and just wrecking things. Great player. So, you've got your corner in Stingley, your true corner, your boundary corner in Stingley, and then you add a Petrie in the slot, and your secondary just got really difficult to mess with. So
also, he is one of the most exceptional football character guys in this class, which Houston loves.
Ding.
Yeah, I have a buddy that was around Jamal Adams at LSU and was around Petrie at Baylor, and he said that even including Jamal Adams, Petrie's the best leader he's ever seen at the collegiate level. So
sounds like a Texan.
It sounds like a Texan.
All right, so now we're back to the Jets, and Ryman survives.
Sign me up.
He makes it there, and I think at this point, we'll take a look at the all, but we're just going to take him as insurance in case there's anything going on with Becton, injury or otherwise. You're giving up on, some receiving options for sure. Jahan Dotson, Ojabo would be a good, person to couch, but we've already got an edge for them. Running threats are there, but probably will be there later. You're getting down into 3-techs, or Travis Jones, who's great, but they have interior defensive line with the Jets. I'm with you. I think Ryman is why not? Which bums me out deeply because I would love to take him with the next pick. But we'll throw a curveball. And
this just kills the Bears.
Goes.
Oh, Kyler Gordon. Okay.
Kyler Gordon, I'm not upset with at all. I really like Kyler Gordon's game, so I would not be mad at that. I know a lot of people would. Not necessarily a need. I think they're fine rolling with Graham Jr. at the other corner besides Jalen Johnson, but Kyler Gordon is an upgrade in my opinion. He's underrated and a very good corner. Now we get down to the Pacific Northwest corner of the draft with 40 and 41, another double shot and a lot of control here. It can take whoever you want. In terms of Seattle's needs, we're looking at OT, QB, and Kyler Gordon would have been a good fit for them. Could have stayed at home and played corner. Up top at 9, we leaned towards Icky, so they've got their tackle. And that leaves them, interestingly, staring at quarterback with a quarterback that they have a link to.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking Corral here because it would make sense. Man, I wouldn't
And if you
hate
did go
it.
Corral, Booth Jr.
Booth is there too.
He's a little below the old physical profile, but again, the defense is different. Ken Norton Jr. out, Clint Hurt in as the defensive coordinator, and they brought over the new defensive assistant, I guess, in Sean Desai, who's kind of collaborating with Hurt to run the defense, and he would know what to do with Andrew Booth Jr., certainly because he was a longtime DB coach. It'd be a big upgrade in their secondary, but I think they might be okay with the corners, whereas I'm not sure they're okay with the quarterbacks.
I don't believe them when they say that they have faith in Drew Lock. I don't believe them. So
I hope I don't believe them.
bringing in Corral as competition, kind of like how it's not that dissimilar. I'm not saying he's Russell Wilson. He's not. But it's not that dissimilar to when, they brought in Russell Wilson as a day 2 pick when they signed
Matt Flynn.
It was Flynn, right? Or was it Tavares?
Matt? No, it was Matt Flynn.
It was Matt Flynn. When they signed him and then they brought in Russell as
Here's
a backup,
the thing,
and Russell
though.
ended
Do
up
you
beating
really
him.
think that Pete doesn't pound the table for like Brees Hall, specifically Brees Hall, more than
Pete
Kenneth
would be
Walker?
obsessed with Brees Hall.
Yeah,
He would
I actually
love
think
him.
he has some running backs later that he's. There are a couple of guys. There's always, as you know, running back is one of my favorite positions to scout. There are always a couple of running backs as I go through that I put a little star by, like Pete Carroll, like Sincere McCormick. I was like, oh geez, this is a Pete Carroll guy through and through. But I would say value wise, again, we've got some decent receivers still on the board. Sky Moore would look really good in a Seahawks uniform. So would Mechie. Mechie would be tremendous for whichever quarterback. But again, you got to get the quarterback.
Just because of their current quarterback situation, this is one of the only teams I'm willing to do this for. I would lean Corral just to see what he's got. Because I think now that, you got a tackle with Ekwonu. They have good receivers. Well, at least a good receiving duo. It's thin, but they've got guys. Mm-hmm. If there was a place that Corral could go, and get playing time early with a supporting cast around him in a system that they're going to run the ball so damn much that it'll probably kind of protect him a little bit anyway. Yeah, I could see Corral having success there. So I would not make that pick for every team, but for the Seahawks, I would.
All right, Matt Corral with his links to Lane Kiffin and, of course, Monty Kiffin's connection to Pete Carroll, longtime connection at USC. Matt Corral ends up in the Seahawks quarterback room, and now they've got another pick. So now we can pick that receiving threat. We can pick the corner. They're pretty set at safety. They're pretty set at interior offensive line, but there's Tyler Smith. Jeez. Travis Jones is a rotational guy in the middle of their defense to be the absolute rock. There's a million ways they could go. Oh, boy.
I know.
Christian Harris. Yikes.
But at the same time, there's a lot of good linebackers in this class.
I fully agree.
I think, okay, we invested in Matt Corral. Let's make him successful.
Sure.
Let's get receiver. Let's at least try to do right by him. Sky Moore?
Well, here's the thing. You know my feelings on Jahan Dotson and that he is really good, but I think really good in the slot. And that's, quite frankly, if he's going to break into the Seahawks receiving core, that's where he's going to play, right? Lockett's going to hold down one side. DK's going to hold down the other side. And Jahan Dotson's got to beat out, Freddie Swain. Like, done.
Well, who's the other kid they just took?
Eskridge. From Michigan. Yeah, Dwayne Eskridge. Jahan Dotson has to beat out Dwayne Eskridge. Done. Like, I fully believe that. So, or you run Eskridge and Jahan Dotson as, dual slots on the inside. Yikes. Like, try and cover those.
I don't think that you can go wrong if you're wide receiver 4. Let's just say Eskridge beats out Dotson. If your wide receiver 4 is Jahan Dotson,
all right,
I think you're doing okay.
Done. Jahan Dotson comes down to the Northwest. We'll recap
Whoa.
these picks as we get through. 50 is going to be our last pick because it's the pick of the Chiefs. But let's recap what happened after Jahan Dotson. The Colts go Trey McBride.
Very on brand. Super on brand for them.
For sure. Brees Hall becomes a Falcon. That could be fun. Arthur Blank finding his, running back to be like, all right, Arthur Smith, you like big, powerful backs that can go a million miles an hour? Like, how about
There you
Brees
go.
Hall? Travis Jones to the Browns.
Value.
Good refill for the interior of their offensive line. Tyler Smith to the Ravens. Again, the most Raven thing ever. Let's pick a brute for the offensive line and probably throw him inside. Now, if he had a chance to stick at tackle, it would be on a team like the Ravens. Sky Moore to the Vikings. Can't say I like that one bit because that's a tough receiving core.
From a Bears fan
Perspective, that would hurt. I love Sky Moore, and he would be used well in their offense. So it's not a bad pick, Vikings fans. It's just that it hurts a little bit. Jaquan Brisker becomes a Commander. And then we ran this in simulation before the actual podcast, and Logan Hall got picked both times by the Bears. What is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what
I know
the
they think
computer's
they
seeing
need a
there.
3-tech, and they do need a 3-tech. I just don't think that 3-tech is Logan
Not
Hall.
with Perry and Winfrey on the board.
Yeah, so I don't think that 3-tech is Logan Hall. But now we're down to our last two picks of our draft controllers. The Saints at 49, way up top at in the teens. They ended up with, Charles Cross and Chris Olave. That's a great double. So that takes their wide receiver and OT off. The only other need they have is quarterback, and that would be probably, again, if you want him to contribute this season, that would be a shot at Sam Howell, and not a bad shot. I could see him working into that offense, especially if you're talking about his 2020 tape, not his 2021 tape. But quarterback might not be the thing. If they don't go quarterback, depth chart guy,
They definitely need, I would say, defensive tackle rejuvenation. So right now they're starting defensive line. You're looking at Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport on the edges, which is great. You're looking at David Onyemata and Shai Tuttle as your two defensive tackles, and then Albert Huggins.
I'll take one of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of want another one.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing that, Perrion Winfrey is the sort of obvious choice in this range. They have anybody at edge that's just really big? Cameron Thomas would be more. Well, Cameron Thomas would be like the Cam Jordan in training replacement, which I don't hate either.
Well, I forgot they also took Peyton Turner last year, so they have enough Cameron Jordans in training.
Yeah, no, correct. I don't know. It's really between Winfrey and Mathis, and for me, they're more similar than you might think. But Winfrey's the more classic 3-tech.
Yeah, it depends if you want a 3 or if you want a nose.
Yeah, the 3 is Winfrey for sure, and Fedarian Mathis actually I think works better as a 3, or actually I think I listed his best position as 4i. So
which they don't really do a whole lot of that.
Not great fits for them.
They don't really need linebacker either, because right now their linebacker, you got Demario Davis, who somehow is never aging.
Yeah.
Pete Werner stepped up pretty big for them.
Yep. Pete Werner played great as a rookie.
Zach Bond is your other linebacker. Corner, you got Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, PJ Williams.
Yeah, I don't need
safeties, Marcus May.
Oh, they got Marcus, right. So
they brought in Daniel Sorensen. I forgot about that too.
What about interior offensive line? You want to double up on tackle? You want to give them another target?
They got Andrews Pete, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz.
Yeah, Cesar Ruiz. They put a lot of money into that. So
I think it just depends on how much you like Pete and Ruiz, to be honest.
Yeah, and they seem to like both of them. From a value perspective, if we go all, obviously corners pretty well stacked. Ajabo doesn't really fit for them. Running back room?
So you got Alvin Kamara, and you got Mark Ingram, Tony Jones, favorite of Sean Payton, who's no longer there. I mean, man, Kenneth Walker with Alvin Kamara.
I feel like Kenneth Walker might be the biggest value pick right here. Like you said, they don't really need linebacker. I think Christian Harris is a great player. We talked about Perrion Winfrey. We talked about Sam Howell, but if they're not sold on Howell's skill set or they're waiting to next year, but Kenneth Walker.
Can I interject slightly?
Yeah.
What would you rather have? Andrew Booth now, just because you can, and I don't know, Keontae Ingram later.
Yeah.
Or Kenneth Walker now and some corner who's not anywhere close to Andrew Booth later.
You're not going to have to try and sell me on the fact that there's a ton of running back depth in this draft, because I'm a huge Ty Chandler fan there, but it's not just him. There's so many, all the way down the board. It's just that Kenneth Walker is both of our RB1s, right? And we're 49 now. We're solidly in the middle of the second round. Like, second round running back, I'm fine with. You hold control. And if he's that dynamic, maybe you take him there for the extra 10%. They just got Paulson Adebo. They got Marshawn Lattimore. I don't know. It just seems like a big double up. And the running back room seems a lot emptier. And if you can get a Kenneth Walker, you do that.
Okay. You sold me.
Okay.
Let's just do it.
Kenneth Walker becomes a Saint. So with the final pick in our draft controllers draft, it's Kansas City rounding out the top 50. Kansas City, in terms of what we already have for them, all stacked up at the end of the first round, George Pickens and AK from Penn State. That is not a terrible haul. Really gives them flexibility as they move into this 50th pick. They don't really have to have anything, because those are their biggest needs, but corner is the one, and Booth sitting there is, I don't know, that seems pretty golden. I don't think they would pass on that, put it that way.
It's almost too easy. So,
right.
We got Rashad Fenton, who's okay as like a number 2 corner in my opinion. DeAndre Baker, we'll see what happens with him. You got L'Jarius Sneed, who I know they really like as a nickel. He can flex outside a little bit, but I think he's better as a nickel, personally. I still think they need another outside corner, and I think them passing on Andrew Booth here would just kind of be malpractice because he fits exactly what they like.
Yeah. No, the 23rd ranked player, even if you don't have Booth that high, if you have a need for corner and you're twice that, you're at 50, and a player from anywhere in the 20s at a position of need who has a very clean sheet in terms of tape is there, you just do it. So Andrew Booth Jr. is going to become a Chief, and their haul becomes Pickens, AK, and Andrew Booth Jr. in the top 50. That's
as good as you can get, and this is a team that had to reload, and they had to make some financial moves and then get picks back and then use those picks to reload, and damn straight they did.
So that's our draft controllers mock draft for 2022. All the teams with 3 or more picks in the first 50 selections, and just looking at the sum total now that we're done, Lions come away with Trayvon Walker at 2, although turns out they could have waited for an edge until the end of the first round. At the end of the first round, they take a big swing on Christian Watson for that 5th year of control, hoping that he'll add that explosive element to the wide receiver core and a year of development. So presumably when they get their quarterback of the future next year, Watson's up to speed. And then Desmond Ridder as that developmental quarterback that might be the quarterback of the future.
Looking at Houston, we got Derek Stingley Jr. at number 3 overall, who I think is a lockdown corner and perfectly fits, what they want in their team culture. We have Garrett Wilson at 13th overall, and then Jalen Petre, who's, the ultimate Swiss Army knife, play him at safety, play him at nickel, great locker room leader. Like, this is a very Houston draft.
Yeah, like you said, high character football guys. In terms of the Chiefs, they lead it off with George Pickens at wide receiver. Fantastic option for Mahomes down the field. Arnold Ebiketie, who we both think is one of the top tier edges in this class, and they grab him at 30. In reality, I don't think he'll be there, but if he is, Chiefs fans will celebrate. Again, Andrew Booth Jr. at 50, which seems like a steal. And we were really only running the draft to 50, but to finish up and get our results, we grabbed Christian Harris. What the heck at 62? That's, I believe, a haul that would cause some partying in Kansas City.
Yeah, just a little bit. Probably not as much as New Orleans is going to be partying, looking at their haul. Not that they really need an excuse to party. We got Charles Cross at 16, which absolutely will not happen in the real draft. But, anything can happen in these kind of computer-generated mocks, so we just kind of went with it and got the best value we could. Chris Olave at 19 also is a really, really solid pick for them. And then Kenneth Walker at 49, just because he's one of the 32 best players, and we felt like the value was there.
Yeah, it fills out their running back room really nicely. New York Giants fans, I don't know what they would do if they had this draft, because they're used to Dave Gettleman drafts. So Evan Neal at 5 they basically had their pick of tackle. They pick Evan Neal to lead off as their left tackle of the future. Jameson Williams as hopefully their alpha deep threat for a long time in the Big Apple, and Jermaine Johnson at 36 still hanging around into the second round. Speaking of things that won't happen, Giants fans, don't get your hopes up, but if it did and they came away with Neal, Williams, and Johnson from their first 3 picks, there would be a lot of partying in the city.
So far, I think we're doing pretty good for every single team here, not going to lie.
Yeah.
I think we're doing all right. For the Jets, I mean, this one might be even the best out of all of them. So we got Sauce Gardner at 4, Drake London at 10 to fill probably the 2 biggest needs on the roster. Boye Mafe, from Minnesota as yet another edge rusher, just because. And then on the off chance that, Mekhi Becton is not working out, which we're still not entirely sure what's going on there. We got Bernhard Raimann as a developmental tackle. At worst case scenario, he's a swing tackle and, kind of protects them from injury, both at right and left tackle, because I think he can step in and start some games for him and be pretty effective there. So hell of a haul there for the Jets.
Yeah, year 2 of their rebuild takes some serious jet fuel right there. That's an acceleration. And looking at the Seahawks draft, we rounded out. They pick up Ickey at 9 to be their left tackle. Matt Corral to supplement, or we'll say supplement their quarterback room. Hopefully, I would imagine they hope he beats out Drew Lock as their quarterback moving forward. And then Jahan Dotson as either their 3rd or 4th wide receiving option. Doesn't really matter. I would imagine he'd be their 3rd wide receiving option in short order. And that makes a very dangerous offense for opposing defenses. So, like you said, I don't think any of these teams came out on the short end of the stick. I don't feel like, as we went through, again, these many teams, we're talking about 7 or 8 teams here that have 3 picks in the top 50. Always kind of feels like one of them would probably get squeezed. It doesn't feel like that at all to me. And really, I think that's the argument. The counter argument to anybody saying this draft is weak or lacks talent or anything else. We just ran through 8 team needs, and I feel like pretty much got something great for all of them.
Yeah, this mock draft right here is the poster child for why we're saying this class is really, really deep. It obviously doesn't have the same flash at quarterback, but I mean, God, just look at this. For 7 teams or whatever it was, we got solid 3 to 4 pick packages for every single team that I don't think anybody can be disappointed with. So this is a very deep, very entertaining draft class to me. And I think anybody that says it's a bad class has not been paying attention.
All right, well, that wraps up our draft pods. Before we actually get into the actual 2022 NFL draft, we will be kicking it off on Wednesday evening, 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be going for a couple of hours with a live stream just to let everybody blow off steam and get excited for the first round that shows up on Thursday. We'll be kicking that off an hour before round 1 starts, and of course carrying you all the way through round 1, kicking off half an hour on Friday before rounds 2 and 3, and half an hour on Saturday before all the hardcores go 4 through 7, and we finish up the draft with all of you. Can't wait. Gonna be an excellent time.
We will see you all very soon. Make sure to bring an appropriate amount of drinks because we sure will. And yeah, we'll see you guys what is it? This comes out Wednesday, so we'll see you tomorrow, I think, probably. Later.
Take care.